And we're back with another great episode of Natural AF. I'm your host, Isaac.
And I'm Alexa.
And this episode, Alexa does everyone the honor of interviewing me.
Well, I didn't really interview as such, but after we did our first episode together, obviously we referenced episode 0, which was Isaac's first ever episode that he did on his own. But I guess we just wanted to expand on that a little more and share a little more of his journey. So yeah, that was probably about half the episode. And then we just kind of discussed some of the things that came up. And it was actually, we had a lot of fun recording it, and it's a great episode. However,
in the middle of us nerding out on stuff that we love to talk about, like human design and other fascinating topics, the audio we found clipped out and the video went in and out. So we did our best. It's disappointing, but
we've just been getting ready to get the episode out, and I've literally been in tears because as we were finishing up the editing, we realized that we lost chunks of video and chunks of audio. So where the video drops out for anyone watching, you'll still be able to hear. The screen will go black. But the chunks of audio that we lost, we kind of had to then cut out other bits. So if you're listening and you think that the conversation might sound a bit disjointed or it might be missing some context, that's why. So just bear that in mind. We do apologize. However, in the conversation we had, we were talking about, letting go came up quite a bit. So we decided to call this episode Learning to Let Go. And this is us letting go. It's not perfect.
I just like the way you say go.
Go? like no.
Letting go.
I like how I say no.
Yes. So musical. It's a musical language.
Yeah. So anyway, we hope that you still enjoy the episode.
As always, this episode is sponsored by Natural Art Form, a business that Alexa and I run together that makes products that you might use, like a pain relief cream or deodorant or a sunburn repair. But we differentiate ourselves by ensuring that we leave out the chemicals and the products that is quote unquote industry standard for manufacturing, things like propylene glycol. Like, why are you even putting that in products anymore? It's literally in antifreeze. And we turn around and make products using natural ingredients, using our brains and finding ways to not need any preservatives, because we put in things like magnesium or DMSO and other ingredients that are highly antioxidant and keep any microbes from taking over. So it's just a pure thing that you put on your body. And that goes to support your health. And if you support that, it supports our show. And it's an equitable trade.
It's a win-win.
Yes, I love win-wins.
Absolutely.
And so thank you so much to everyone who's already purchased and tried some of our products. And if you've purchased and haven't left us a review, you can just send us a review on our website. You can go to any of the products that you purchased, and at the bottom, there's a little button that says write a review, and you can just add that, and that would be a great help to us.
And you'll also get a reward. So for any review, you'll get a discount for your next purchase. Mm-hmm. We really would love some video testimonials. We get lots of written reviews, but we love some video testimonials that we can use on our socials. So we'd greatly appreciate that.
In fact, you get for video testimonials, because they're of great value to us, we return the value back to you by giving you 30% off your next purchase if you do that. So if you like to be on camera and you don't mind sharing your face and just a short story about your experience, we look forward to seeing those from you.
Yeah. And we are about to launch our Black Friday sale. So if you haven't already, join our mailing list. You can also do that on our website. We're launching the sale this Friday. So if you don't want to miss out, sign up to the mailing list before Friday, and that'll just be running for 4 days only.
Right. Perfect. Let's get into the episode and let's talk about everyone's favorite subject, me.
Enjoy, guys. humble beginnings, Isaac has created a life of excitement and adventure and has acquired a vast set of skills and expertise along the way. He is a father and was trained as a combat medic in the US Army Special Forces. Then, using some of the skills he learnt about herbal remedies, went on to formulate what is now known as Alleviate, an all-natural, fast-acting pain and inflammation relief cream that catalyzed the creation of natural art form. Isaac also has experience in property investment and takes credit for all of the video and audio editing of this podcast and everything you see on social media for both Natural AF and Natural Art Form. He really is a jack of all trades. Isaac's witty humor, positive attitude, and willingness to experiment with new things makes him a joy to be around. I am very blessed to call him my partner and co-host, and I'm so excited that we're dedicating this episode to sharing his story.
Yeah, good intro. I love it.
Well, you did such a good job writing my introduction. I was really impressed. So I had big shoes to fill. So I hope I did it some justice.
Yeah. Well, where do you want me to start? What's the go for this episode?
Well, I guess the way that I started, because you did when we referenced episode 0, you talked a little bit about yourself. But I think you talked more about like where you were at that point in time. You talked about the death of having to put your horse down, which was really, I remember listening to that and that really touched me. And that was a pretty pivotal moment for you. But I guess, yeah, just wanting to hear more of your story, I guess, for people that don't know you. So I guess just start with like, what are some of the most significant life experiences that you've gone through that have really shaped who you are today?
Yeah. Well, growing up, I still am the youngest, the youngest of 4 boys. I have one older half sister, one older half brother, 2 older full brothers. And yeah, we grew up on a small farm out in Wyoming, in the plains, southeastern Wyoming. And yeah, just had horses. My mom was a horse trainer. And yeah, we kind of grew up pretty standard like that. My parents were older. I think that's that's part of what made my experience a little bit different as well. My parents were older. My mom I think she could see through a lot of the society's bullshit. Mm-hmm. And although she would never call it that, my mom doesn't cuss. She doesn't drink. She's very Christian.
Very strong Christian values in Isaac's household.
Yeah, very country. She grew up in North Carolina, and I've always had a love for that part of the country, the East Coast. And we used to go out there, and every few years we'd drive out there and have family vacations out close to the coast. And I just always wanted to be near the water. I love the water, but being in Wyoming, it wasn't around much. So I, played in the dirt and I got into BMX riding, jumping our bicycles over dirt mounds that we'd build. And just got a flavor for, or got a taste rather for a little bit of danger, a little bit of excitement, learning to live with pain. We got this, my mom still laughs about it. Like we'd be out riding our bikes and one of us would crash and we'd come in with a big old gash on our arm or our shin or something. And we'd be bleeding and we'd be like, Mom, look at this. I totally wiped out. Isn't that great? Like
typical boys.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and I remember that toughness, like being like other people perceiving that as tough. I remember one of my brothers almost got in a fight in junior high with some Mexicans at school. And they're like, don't mess with him, man. He's a BMX rider. Those guys are tough as nails. Because we all had scars on our arms, like shins and stuff. I still have tons of scars to this day, but it was, yeah, I remember just being aware of that, this idea of toughness and wanting to cultivate that. And so movies and TV shows that showed that I would gravitate towards, and that would come in later in life when I went to the military. But before I get to that, my first major life rites of passage was when I became a father at 17. And, there's just something about becoming a father at any age that no one can really prepare you for it. You're just not ready. So whether I'm 17 or whether I'm 37, if it's the first time, a lot's going to change that you're not aware of and you can't prepare for. You just have to lean into it and embrace it. And you can really tell. I don't see it too often, really, with the people that I'm surrounding myself with. But when someone resists it and doesn't want to be a father, it's pretty blatant. It's pretty obvious. Either they just check out and they're not there physically, or they're not there emotionally, mentally. But I was the opposite. I was like, I'm a father. I'm going to protect my little daughter. I'm going to do everything I can to be the best dad I can be. And coming from a fatherly standpoint, protector, not so much the nurturer, although shortly after my daughter was born, not shortly after, but like a year and a half later, her mother actually up and disappeared, left me with my daughter. And I won't get into all the personal details around that, but it was hard, but it became apparent soon after that I was going to raise my daughter on my own with the help of my folks, but her mother wasn't going to be in her life. Her mother was off, into some shady stuff that I didn't want my daughter around. So my protection, thing went up, and I was like, I gotta, just keep her safe, keep her around an environment that I want her to grow up in, so that, that she's not pulled into anything, whether it's, drugs or whatever else. So, that shaped my thinking about being a father as well, where again, I'm young, but now I'm also a single father, or having to make the decisions myself. My parents were supportive, but they respected my position and let me make the decisions and, about, what and how she ate and the discipline raising her and stuff. And, and I will say this, whether you're a new parent or you've had kids before, the book that I think was such a gem for helping me navigate that, my sister gave to me. And my older sister has 8 kids. They're Catholic, and they love big families in her community. And my family kind of, we did too. We had a bunch of kids, but the book was To Train Up a Child, and it was written by an Amish guy that was both a horse trainer and a family counselor. And those two actually really pair up well, especially when you have the attitude that he had about training horses, which is a gentle method, not, break the horse, but actually train the horse. Train the horse to behave in a way that's harmonious. And that's how he would train children. And I wanted that for my daughter and my sister, like her kids. A lot of them just showed up so beautifully in the world and the way they are. They're just, peaceful, loving kids, happy, helpful. And that book changed how I would perceive myself and my role. Now I'm like a guiding, teaching, and I don't know. I think one of my gifts that I would say that I'm very grateful that I have is this belief that I can do anything. And I think that, especially when it came to parenting, there was never a thought of being 17 and feeling like I was inadequate to be a dad. I was like, of course, I'm going to be an awesome dad. I'm 17. I'm going to be a good dad before everyone else. I'm going to be a good dad 20 years before any of my peers will be. I didn't think about it consciously and puff my ego up like that consciously, but it was just, I just didn't have any doubts. I was like, still kind of coming from a Christian background, we have a lot of faith. And in my family, it's modeled by my mom the most. So,
and I think because you had that family support too, I think for a lot of people in that situation, they might not have the family support or any support, depending on the situation. And because when I say support, it's also like being so young, the parents can be disapproving. So like physically they might be there, but they're not approving. So there's lots of like baggage that comes with that. So I think you were so blessed to have that family support in so many ways, like physically having them there and having a home and having a solid base for your daughter. And then, for them to actually be supportive in like the decisions you were making for her and all of that. I think that makes a world of difference.
Yeah. And it could have totally turned out way different if I didn't have that support. But that eventually led to me entering the second major rite of passage that I went into was the military. And I didn't join the military how a lot of people do. I went in with the explicit decision and choice to be in the Special Forces. Part of it leaning from my personality to want to go towards something very difficult and challenging, which I learned later in life is really built into my whole design to face challenges heads on, but also I wanted to see what I'm really capable of. And I've been like that my whole life. I would always test myself. I remember one time when I was probably 7 or 8 years old, we had horses. We had a big haystack that was about as tall as our house. And one time I went up there, I blindfolded myself, and I wanted to see if I could climb the haystack blindfolded and then climb down blindfolded. I was just out there by myself, like no one else watching me, no friends hanging out and playing. I would just go off and do weird things like that myself. And I climb up blindfolded without it. There's no ladder, there's no ropes. It's just hay bales. So I'm like grabbing the wires and get up to the top. And I'm like on top of the haystack, and it has a tarp over it to keep the water off. And I'm kind of like walking or kneeling, crawling. And then I'm feeling for the edge. And all of a sudden there is no edge. And then I fall head first. There's like I don't know if you've ever seen a water tank that cattle and people that have cattle have, or horses, this metal water tank.
Oh, yeah.
It was flipped upside down. So there's just a hard metal flat surface. And I fell head first and landed on that. And for a kid that's 7, I was probably like the top of this roof. It probably came down to like about, here. So it was maybe 1.5 meters drop before I hit something. So it wasn't like I probably could have broken my neck. But after I landed, I just started laughing, and I felt fine. It didn't even hurt. I just hit my head on it. You hear this big boom, like from the metal. And I just remember laughing and being like, that was so stupid. I'm like, well, that went well.
I was just kind of laughing as you were saying, like, I, blindfolded myself, wanted to see if I could get up and down. I was like, that's such a metaphor for your life.
Yeah, that's pretty much how I've gone about doing stuff. And the challenges just kept getting more and more insane. Going into the special forces, my dad was military. He was Air Force. He was a mechanic, and he wanted me to go to the Air Force. But I was like, no, I'm going to go do something very challenging. And I had kind of an idea of what it would be like, because I'd seen Rambo, so I thought I knew what being like a special forces Green Beret would have been like. And no, it took so much out of me, but I enjoyed it. I went through special forces selection for the first time in 2006, right after boot camp and airborne school, where we jumped out of planes. And then I went through 3 weeks. It's like a 21-day selection course, and ended up getting non-selected. And that just basically meant that I wasn't going to be in the special forces, but I was going to go back to my unit or whatever, and I could try again. And there was no question in my mind. I was like, I'm trying again. And so fast forward, it took me 2 years to go back to that training course. And I won't get into I'd love to tell all the details about what special forces selection is like. If you want a somewhat decent visual for what it's like, there's a documentary, I think on Netflix. It's called either 2 Weeks in Hell or 3 Weeks in Hell, because the training course actually shortens and lengthens depending on how they're testing it. They like to try new things all the time. But I think it was 2 Weeks in Hell, and it's about the Army Special Forces selection program. And you can see that. But anyways, I went through that again in 2008. And right before I went through selection, I tried running barefoot with these Vibram 5-finger shoes. And I fractured my left foot in the middle in here, a second metatarsal on my left foot, and then entered selection with a broken foot. And then 3 weeks later, left selection with 2 broken feet. But I'd passed. And I'd actually passed every PT test running, every ruck march holding 70 pounds of weight on my back, and, walking as fast as I could for hours and hours and hours. At one point, we even did about a 30-mile road march like that, which is at the end of that, if you want to pass and make the time, we all knew and understood that you had to run as much of that as you could. So it was like the equivalent of doing a marathon, a little bit longer than a marathon, with, Yoda on your back.
Yeah, that's insane. 30 miles is like over 60 kilometers. Is that right?
Yeah, no. It's not 60 miles. It's probably like, let's see, a 5K run is like 3 miles, a little over 3 miles.
Oh, okay. So it's not that much more. It's maybe like 40, 45 kilometers or something. That's still a lot.
Yeah. So
to do with weight on your back. That's insane.
Yeah, probably 40K with broken feet.
And broken feet.
And I just thought, again, it was like falling on that water tank. Afterwards, I didn't even know my feet were broken. I knew something was wrong, but I got to my truck after I'd finished selection, after they told us that I was selected. And okay, so to put a small picture on this, because it's kind of a cool detail. At the beginning of the class, there was 400 men from all over the Army. And some of them were from Marine Corps background, all this other stuff. 400 guys. At the end of it, we had 36 that were selected.
Wow.
Out of that. And the rest of them either quit. Most of them quit. And the other ones, there's probably like 80 or 90 people that had actually finished the whole three weeks. And out of those 80 or 90, 36 of us were selected to continue training. And so it's pretty intense stuff. And all of us had something wrong with our bodies afterwards. Everybody, people with shin splints, people with blisters so bad they went all the way to the bone.
Oh,
like really intense stuff.
Wow.
But I remember smiling every day as I was walking with these broken feet, and people were coming up to me asking, "Are you okay?" I'm just like, just living the dream, bro. Just because that's like sarcastic. I'm like, oh yeah. I'm limping because I'm happy. But that's the attitude that I took towards every big challenge. Was usually there's a part of excitement and joy and like just being alive and being able to face it, and just feeling all the time, even though there's been dark moments where I've kind of felt disconnected from my creator. But part of the reason I was able to smile and have this joyness in my heart was because I still had this connection to God, this connection to my creator, and this faith that it's going to be okay, that anything that he puts me through is not going to take me out, that I can handle it, and that I'm here for a purpose. And yeah, that's been a core belief of mine for a long time.
Well, and I can imagine, because I think we've spoken about this before, that I think we spoke about it maybe on our first episode together, how when you do the inner work and you keep doing it, you get better at it, you just kind of like, it's not going to, like I said, it's not going to take me out. It's not, I can deal with it. I can do it. And then it gets easier and easier. And I imagine that's like the same sort of feeling where you've done this like incredibly difficult task and like being selected, like you actually made it through, where you would come out of that being like, well, if I can do that, I can do anything. Yeah. So, and you do, I think you build, like you spoke about like that connection to God, but even just like you build that trust in yourself where you're like, you know that you can get through anything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I won't go into all the dramatic details, but a lifelong career in the Special Forces was not for me. And although I would have gladly gone down that road, but God intervened, but I also intervened with my own stupidity. And I got married, and it was a very chaotic thing. I got married. That was my second time getting married. First one was my daughter's mom. Second one was this woman that had a penchant for thievery. So I was dealing with that. I was dealing with like physical abuse from her as well, because she's very, very chaotic and stuff.
That was mental illness.
Yeah, mental illness, probably some spirit attachment issues now that I'm aware of how that works. And that led to the military just taking a look at my life, my personal life, and being like, like all this chaotic stuff, all this, she kept getting arrested and all that. Like, you can't do the Special Forces if you're going to have this. So go deal with that, and then you can come back and try again if you want.
So if you wanted to go back, would you have had to have gone through selection again a third time?
Yeah.
Or? Wow, okay.
I think if it was longer than a year or two.
Yeah, right.
I forget what the limits were. But yeah, so I just knew, I was like, all right, I don't really feel like going back through that a third time. I've nothing really to prove to myself. What I realized was selection isn't about, it's not about training you and making you tough, and it's really just there. If you show up and you're able to pass it and they select you, it's like you're just that kind of person. So I just knew that that's who I was to begin with. I didn't really need to prove myself to myself anymore. I got to see under the hood and things that I'm still integrating today that I saw that I'm like, wow, that was some shamanic shit. There was times where I got into touch with a psychic level of power and control that I believe exists for all of us in different ways. It's unique to everybody, but I was able to shoot targets in pitch black with my night vision malfunctioning, and still hit the targets and was surprised at how many targets I was actually able to hit without being able to physically really see them. I don't know how to explain that. It sounds like I'm crazy, but it's like I think there's a lot of things that go on like that men in the special forces, especially because they're opening you up to like your full potential. As long as you don't quit and you show up and you do this, you're going to come face to face with a part of yourself that few people ever really get to see. And that's why I think movies like The Men Who Stare at Goats, it's hilarious, but it's true. There's books about it. There's the military did psychic practice, psychic training, research, all around the idea of just expanding your consciousness. They tried to kill goats with their minds. They were cloud bursting, and I've actually done that, not in the military, but since. We're powerful beings.
Absolutely.
And I also realized later on that one of the functions of the military, in my belief, is to take these amazing people, men and women, and send them downrange and kill as many of them as possible. That's not the primary function of it, because there is good that the military does. I don't want to ever come across as if I'm just throwing shade on the military, but knowing what I know about tactics, about using the initiative surprise and all this stuff, things like the famous or infamous Normandy beach raid in France during World War II, to me, that was like an obvious waste of life and an intentional one. You don't send that many men, some of the best men, some of the most, like self-sacrificial, like, we're going to do this for France. We're going to go help our brothers in Europe. And, the Germans are raping and killing and all this stuff. And we're going to put our lives on the line and stop it. Well, our commanders put them on the beach in the worst possible situation in broad daylight, in a disadvantage where they were just mowed down. And once I realized that, I was like, thank God that I was actually pushed out of the special forces. Not that I'm throwing shade on anyone in there, but although I do see that there's a giant risk for people that go into that to be manipulated and used, and having their brilliance used for pretty evil shit, for murdering families and people, and in service of pharmaceutical companies and banks and some really corrupt institutions. And so thank God that I was a bit of a dumbass, and but I can't be too hard on myself either, because I got married with good intentions. I wanted to have a whole family. If I got married, I would be able to have my daughter on base with us, and it just was a mess that I fully own, and I'm grateful for now, because that led to me doing the Special Forces medic program. That was my ex's idea. So grateful for that. Yeah. Another example of just having total belief in myself to go in there and do the medic training. And that led to me with the confidence and skill set as well to go and make what I do now with natural art form. So you can see, like, there's, even with all the mistakes, all this stuff, I don't get down on myself too much. I used to have like this kind of, I would push it to the back of my mind, but I used to be pretty hard on myself and like ashamed. And just, it wasn't even until just recently that I'm starting to like let go of that, release the shame, and embrace who I am, which at my core, like all of us, at my core, I'm just a positive being of light, somebody that really wants to do good, somebody that has a lot of love and good intentions, and wants to, put my energy towards, this, sharing truth, uncovering lies, being helpful, helping people get back to their empowered, natural, totally real selves.
Yeah. And I think for you too, we've got some episodes coming up on human design, and we've touched on it here and there. And just knowing your human design as well. So Isaac has in his profile the 3 line, which is part of his, in your case, it's your conscious personality. So the 3 line is all about trial and error and making mistakes to figure out what works and what doesn't work. So for you, like, knowing that now, you didn't know that back then, but for you, like, making mistakes is part of who you are. Like, it's very necessary for you to make mistakes to figure out the best way to do things.
Yeah.
So, and just an interesting take on, because we all, I think a lot of us hold lots of shame and regret about our past mistakes and things like that. I definitely went through that at a point in my life. And now my perspective on it is, if I hadn't gone through all those really hard things, I wouldn't be who I am today. It sounds really cliche, but it's very true. Like, I wouldn't be as resilient as I am. I wouldn't be this strong, empowered woman that I am today, that I definitely was not when I was going through all of my quote unquote mistakes and going through all of my stuff. But especially for you, like, having that 3 line in your design, it's very necessary for you to do that. And I think that's what I love about human design, is like, knowing this when you've got kids. I think you can be just, guided towards things in a different way. So instead of mistakes being, criticized, they're being more praised, and like, just really embracing them more, because that really is who you are. Like, you just like go in and you do things, and if you mess up, it's like, all right, well, let's pivot and go this way instead.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not to be flippant about it, because I've been a bit of a joker, and like, I like to laugh and have fun and all this stuff, and it can kind of come across, I imagine, for some people, that I'm just flippant about divorce and all this stuff, like, been divorced so many times, whatever. And I'm like, I'm not trying to be flippant of it, but I don't spend much time down in the dumps and like really beating myself up over stuff anymore. Like, I have done it in the past, or would catch myself kind of just feeling like shit and just being like, having negative self-talk, like, oh, I fucked things up again, or I did that again. Like, that's something to revisit and untrain as we go forward. But it's important to have a good outlook and be positive and have fun, and to not let those those difficult moments in your past distract you from what really matters, what this purpose in this present moment needs from you. So,
and I think it's good. I don't think it's flippant. I mean, we've joked a lot about it. Like, we say things like, oh, 4th time's the charm, babe, with me. Like, I think it's good. Like, I think humor is, like, if you can't look at, like, things in your life that are, have been, might have been really difficult or whatever at one point in your life, if you can't get to a point where you can look at them with humor, I think you're probably taking life a little bit too seriously. And it's not to like make a joke of everything, but I love that we joke about that, and we laugh about things like that, because
it's
at the end of the day, it's your life experience. Like, would you rather laugh about it, or would you rather like beat yourself up over it? Like, obviously there's a time and a place. Like, when you were going through your divorces and stuff, you're not going to like be laughing about it. Like, oh, another one bites the dust. Like, But, after, it's been years now. It's like, we can laugh about it and make jokes about it. Like, it's not a huge
and
deal.
I guess too is like, I don't really care too much about how, because you can also perceive, think about how other people perceive you, and, worry about that too much. Like, I don't really give a shit. Like, when my daughter was born, I'm 17, pushing around a stroller, I'm fully aware, like, now that I know that I can actually feel, I can absorb other people's emotions and I can feel them, I knew what people were feeling or thinking about me back then. Back then I thought it was probably just my own shame or guilt or whatever, but it wasn't. I was like, no, it's these people feel uncomfortable looking at me pushing around a little baby in a stroller.
A baby pushing a baby.
Yeah. And I was just like, I would feel that, sense it, and just kind of ignore it. And I would just have fun with my daughter. Like, it was some of the best years of my life. I love those years growing up, or with watching her grow up, and, doing all the fatherly stuff. And My daughter and I, we have a good relationship. We still joke around about it. Every Mother's Day, she gives me a present. It's like dad mom, like happy dad mom day.
I love it.
And yeah, like we have fun with it. And it's the same thing. It's the same energy and intention when we make jokes about it. You know, we kind of have, my daughter and I both have, we kind of have a dark sense of humor, but it's not dark for dark's sake, but it's like, we'll joke about even her mom leaving and stuff. It's like, it might seem inappropriate to some people, but to us, it's just like, we love each other and we've come to terms with that. And, you know, I don't think that she's internalized that her mom left because of her. She doesn't carry any guilt like that. We just recognize it for what it was. She was going through a dark place. Her mother was. And, you know, we actually really do like pray for her healing and hope that, just has a beautiful life and that can be worthy of that as well, because we all are. And whatever she went through that put her in a situation where she felt like she couldn't be a mother and she needed to leave. In some ways, maybe she did the right thing. And maybe we need to be grateful of that for her to take herself out of the equation if she felt like she would bring darkness in some really insane situations to the family if she stayed, because that's a real possibility depending on what was going on with her. So,
yeah.
You know, so you never know. And
I think, it's just like people have to have compassion. Like I know when you first told me that, you know, the story of Tegan's mom and whatever, like, yeah, of course. I mean, there was a part of me that was like, I can't understand how any mother could leave their child. Like I can't even fathom that, like personally. But on the flip side of that, it's not like, you know, because I think some people are like, oh, that's so fucked up and how could she do that and what a horrible person. But it's like, but on the flip side of that, I'm like, I can't imagine what it would be like to like leave my child. So for her to be in a place where that's the decision she made, like I can't even imagine what she was going through internally to make that decision. Like I actually, like I feel really sorry for her. Like,
but the other good thing, because who says this the most? The remedy is in on the legal side.
Oh, the remedy's in the act, like whatever's been written,
There's something to that about this situation, because I look at it now, knowing what I know about, which isn't a lot, but about generational, healing generational things, whether it's generational curses or your generational trauma and stuff like that. And I see it as a really, truly powerful win, that my daughter, one, came into the world, that she wasn't just aborted, and two, that she grew up very differently than her mother did, and then very differently than her mother's mother did, because there was a lot of abuse in that family. And my daughter grew up without any of that. And, you know, with, like sexual abuse and all that stuff, it was, you know, horrific. And I think, you know, looking at my own family, you know, to be totally frank and honest, like there's some of that in my own family, but before I was born, you know, stuff that my parents went through. So generationally, it's important to be aware of that, and then to also know that we can heal that, and that the generations going forward, we can protect from that, and we can put new energy into the whole system and actually make some powerful changes and do some really good things just by being good parents, just by being present in our children's life and not exposing them to that horror and trauma and all that stuff. And
such an important point to make, because you know, these architects of control, when you actually look at all the things that they do, it's literally to keep people in a state of trauma, in a state of fear. And when you're in a state of fear, you're much easily controlled. And you're also responding to lots of things from a fearful state, which is you're not going to respond in the right ways for what's for your highest good and like what you're here to actually do on this earth. So when you see that, you can see how these patterns, you know, these generational patterns that are passed down keep perpetuating. And so to be aware of it is so important. And then to know that we are powerful enough to heal that. I mean, I've heard from there's lots of different schools of thought around this kind of stuff, but I've heard pretty consistently that you can heal up to 7 generations before you and 7 generations after you. So it is possible, and it's never too late. Like you can, I've got to say, when I started learning about this stuff a couple of years ago, I was like so scared that I was going to pass on all this stuff to my children. And it was like a really big motivator for me. I was like, I'm going to like heal all my shit, and like I'm not going to pass anything down to my children. And like now I'm at a bit more of a balance point with it, where I'm like, you know, I do the best I can, and like I always take things, you know, the things that come up and the things that show up in my life at certain times, I take them as always take them as an opportunity to heal and grow through them. But I also know that like we're not perfect, and there are for sure going to be things that still get passed down through my children, but I don't have this fear around like, oh my God, I'm going to fuck my kids up, because I know that they then have the power. And I can only imagine, like, I think this next generation of kids is going to be so freaking powerful, like that they're going to, you know, do the work, and they're going to have even more knowledge than we ever did. Like they're going to be, I mean, just for our kid, I can only speak for when we have kids, but like the stuff that they're going to know from birth that we're only just learning, like they're going to have that Absolutely. From the outset, like, and they can heal anything. So, you know, we really, yeah, I think that's a big focus for us. And I think it's a really important point to make.
So, I mean, that brings us up to where I am now, which is putting my energy into growing our family, our business, and this podcast, and growing what we love.
And we kind of missed a big chunk of like how we met and whatever, but we talked about that in our first episode together, which is episode 11. So if you want to hear that story, it'll kind of fill in the gaps a little bit about how Isaac and I met and how we came to be to where we are today. But yeah, we're definitely, now that we're together, we're building, you know, your business. You create a natural art form, but now that I've come on board, we're working on that together. We relaunched this podcast together because you also started that on your own. And again, it's really interesting, like from a human design perspective, again, like you're a split definition, which I'm not going to go into like how you find that in a chart, but when you pull your own chart, it'll tell you what definition you are. And being a split definition, you kind of need others to sort of connect the parts of you that are disconnected. And I find it interesting that you kind of started all these things on your own, but you kind of did struggle a bit, and you're like, I really need help. I need others. And yeah, since we've come together, it's really, I mean, and we kind of had to start from scratch again really here, but it's actually really, I think we worked together really well. And it's like, actually, we've actually been able to grow the business, and like just relaunching the podcast and the way that it's going now, it's like, I think it's definitely meant to be. It wasn't something I thought I'd be doing so soon. I think I've always thought of like doing a podcast would be lots of fun and like whatever. But like now seeing the work that goes into it, I'm like, oh wow, I probably wouldn't have done this for like another 5 or 10 years if I was on my own. But I think it's all been very divinely guided.
Yeah. Well, anything that you want to move towards that is like your life's purpose and all that is going to be hard work in the beginning. And I don't think it needs to be like, you know, something that stops you. But a lot of times people, especially in the entrepreneurial side of things, when you start a business, a lot of people say like, if they knew how much work it would be, they never would have started. But it doesn't have to be like that. Cause you know, we're both not strangers to hard work. Like you work really hard on everything that you do, whether it was your previous job and, you know, the other stuff that you're involved with the AVN and all that. Like we all work hard, especially those of us that have, that kind of work ethic.
But I think that's like a paradigm we need to shift out of now. I think it's about working smarter, not harder. I think we're so conditioned to like work really hard and like put in all these hours and don't get me wrong, in a lot of cases, especially when you're starting a business, like that is very necessary in the beginning. But I don't think we need to like be working our guts out for the rest of our lives. And I think we're very conditioned to do that. And that's kind of what people think is like, oh, well, that's what makes you like a good person. You worked hard for your life. And like, you know, when you get to the end of your life and you look back and it's like, I was a really, he was a really hard worker. And that's how we want to.
What you put your energy and focus into. Like we just finished recording an episode with somebody that talks about script writing and how movies are there to condition us and get us to believe certain things that may or may not be true. And one of those beliefs is that, you know, anything worth having, you have to work hard for it. Yes and no. deconditioning is hard work.
Yeah.
Getting out of your own way can be the hard work. But if you're focused on doing that, then it becomes easier. And another thing, like Brian Tracy, I love this guy. And there's probably other people that I would point to that talk about it. The one thing, I forget the name of the guy that wrote that book, but Brian Tracy talking about asking yourself the question every day in your business and in life. I've heard this so many times and I'm starting to actually do it. What's the one thing that I could, that is the one thing. What's the one thing I could change in my business that would make everything else either unnecessary or just easier? You know, and it's not just trying to get to an easy life, but it is this different type of modality of thinking where you're putting hard work into making life easier, smoother, more efficient. And that's part of my human design as well, is looking for efficiencies. Sometimes, you know, my anger and frustration at like, why is this like retarded? Like, why did I mess up? Why? But I'm also like looking at the underbelly of it, like ripping that out and being like, I don't need that. Why am I even wasting my time with this? I can just, you know, do the same thing with this program versus that. And this makes this process obsolete. I don't have to do it anymore.
Yeah. So. And I think that's why, like, and again, that's why we love human design. It's when you actually come into more of who you are, like we can't be good at everything. And I think, and then like, you know, to talk about human design again, for the non-energy type, so there's 4 main types, 5 if you include manifesting generators as their own type, but they're a subset of generators. And generators, they make up 70% of the world, and they have a defined sacral center, which means that they're like the Energizer bunnies of the world. They have all this energy, and as long as they're doing what lights them up, they can do it forever. Like they can just put so much energy into it that never really runs out. But for the non-energy types, which I am, I'm a projector, then you've got manifestors and reflectors. We really have to be efficient with our energy because we don't have an endless source of energy and it's very inconsistent. So I think for me, and again, because of how we're conditioned to live in a generator world where we're just like, go, 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 go. We work full time, you grind, you know, you're always on your grind. And I definitely lived that life and I was always burnt out. I was always getting sick because I was just like pushing myself way too much. And being able to step back now and like recognize that and be able to just accept that, yeah, I'm not, number one, we're not all good at everything. Like we all have our strengths and weaknesses. And then just knowing how much energy you have to put into things. And I think that's what's so important is knowing where you need to direct your energy. And
super critical.
Yeah, and knowing who you are, and
you'll know. Well, so this is like, you know, a whole couple of episodes we could get into breaking this down, but I did want to talk about it because learning human design and you know, astrology as well. But I think we spend more time on human design because it seems more like day-to-day functional, practical in our relationship and how we see other people and you know, where to focus our energies is really important to get right. So if I'm wasting my time trying to be something that I'm not, I'm just going to be more frustrated. And once I realized that one of my signs of not being in alignment is frustration, you know, and one of Alexa's not self theme is bitterness. Yeah. Those are little guides to tell you, oh, I'm drifting into bitterness. What do I need to shift to bring me back into alignment with where I want to be and who I want to, you know, how I want to spend my time and my day. And
well, and that's what I was getting to before. I kind of lost my train of thought halfway through talking, but using that as like as a signpost of like, so for you, and I've seen it with you, like when you're working on something in particular and you're getting really frustrated, and then like I'll just like, you know, just really softly point out, like, you're getting really frustrated. Maybe you need to stop, because if you're getting frustrated, you're not in alignment. Like whatever you're doing right now isn't in alignment. And I think like being able to recognize that we can't be good at everything. We can't do everything ourselves, because that's something that you often say, like in your business, you're like, I shouldn't be doing everything. And then I just hear that as, you know, being a split definition. I'm like, yeah, split definition would say that. And for you, that is true. Like you shouldn't be doing everything yourself. Whereas for me, I'm a single definition, so I'm more autonomous, and it's for me, I'm like, I can do everything myself. But in saying that, I also had to learn through
Like in my previous job, I was there for almost 4 years and I ended up in management positions. And when you're in management, you can't do everything yourself. Mm-hmm. You have to learn how to delegate. And I really had to learn how to do that because I was always like, oh, I'll just do it. You know, if you want a job right, you just job. What's the saying? If you want a job done right, you just do it yourself.
Yeah.
And I was very much of that mentality. And that is true to a degree, but you kind of do have to let go a little bit.
Well, it goes back to conditioning in school as well. And I've heard this so many times from Robert Kiyosaki, and I 100% agree with him, that the school conditions you that cheating is bad. They call it cheating. If you're taking a test and you look at your partner's or someone else's paper and you copy an answer, that's bad. And in business, that's called business. It's like collaboration. And I still run into this. I have a little bit of that conditioning myself, but you need to collaborate with other people. Even if you're single definition, you still need to collaborate with other people. It's called life. It's called family. It's called interacting with others and growing something, because it's not just about us. And the school system teaches you to isolate, to just, oh, this is just you. It's all on you. You have to know all the answers. You have to know every subject. Like, why are we learning? Why is every kid having to learn history and math and English and all these other subjects? Not just at a basic level, but they have to answer all these questions that, you know, as if, you know, you have to learn calculus. Like, why the hell am I learning calculus if I'm going to go, you know?
And you often hear that from kids in school. I remember thinking this a lot with the subjects I didn't like. You're like, why am I even learning this? I'm never going to use it. And you literally, like 90% of the stuff you learn in school, you never use in life.
Yeah. Yeah. And but it's important to know, like, and explore those ideas, like, of what it really means to be split definition, single definition. These are like operating system pieces that we get to look at and examine, and then choose to define how we live our lives and what functions, and look at the patterns that come out. Did that work? Did it not work? When I did this with other people, did it work or not work? Do I have a natural tendency towards working with others, or do I work better by myself? You know, and there's strength in that, and you put yourself in a position of strength, and then you bring that to the team. You know, if Alexa works better on her own, and then whatever she completes on her own and sends it to the team, then that works better. And for me, if I'm like, well, I work good alongside people, or whatever that is.
And there's different, like, that's just one aspect of the chart. Like, there's lots of, like, I have lots of different, like, other aspects of my chart that I work really well in teams, and I always have. Like, I've always been a team player, but I prefer to work alone. But like you said, we're social creatures where we it's impossible to go through this world without, like, interacting with anyone. You just, it can't be done unless you're like a hermit and you go and live like in a cave somewhere and like literally like don't talk to anyone ever again. So there's always different aspects, and and just in the context of human design, it's called the human design experiment. It's not meant to be taken with dogma and like, I'm this way and I can't be any other way. And there's so much nuance to it as well. Like, there's so many different aspects of your chart. Because if you look at circuitry, like, there's individual circuitry, tribal circuitry, and collective circuitry. So even though I'm a single definition and I tend to work, I'm more independent and autonomous, my circuitry is collective. So I'm more geared towards, like, with the work that I do, I'm more geared to, and being a projector, guiding the wider, like, more of like humanity. That's more like the collective. Tribal's more like community, family, like more the closer, more intimate groups, and then individual, self-explanatory. So that's a different aspect again. So just to clear that up.
And these are all just ways of, like I was getting to, like, getting in the driver's seat, pulling, like, looking at how to actually function and drive this thing, instead of just constantly being led through, the way that most people are. They're unconscious, they're being manipulated, they're being conditioned by schooling and, religious organizations and the media and all that to live a certain life. And I learned that painfully through the past year, when I was going through my previous relationship. I won't get into all the details now, but like, it's such a critical central thing. It's letting go, learning to let go of things, letting go of, I have to care what they're thinking about me, or I made them feel a certain way. It's my fault. I need to take on all this guilt. You're letting go. Letting go is one of the best things I started to focus on. Letting go and releasing who I'm not and remembering who I already am. It's not about becoming something else. Like if you're here in your life and your situation is unideal, if that's the right word, and I want to move towards here, it's not about, I got to become someone else. Most of the time, in fact, it's about unbecoming who you were conditioned to be here. And you'll naturally just become that. Because the things that you point to that you say, I want to be like that, there's a part of you that probably already is. But it's buried under all these layers of conditioning that are keeping you held and frozen in this state that you want to let go of. So the more you can recognize to let go of, I believe, the more you'll just naturally elevate to who you are truly.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's such a good point. I'm so glad you brought that up, because I used to think that like to be the person I wanted to be, I had to change everything about myself. And don't get me wrong, there are certain things that we need to change. And I would say that's more like our choices. So our day-to-day habits, if they're not in congruence with who you want to be, then of course you're not going to be that person. However, it's exactly, you put it so perfectly. It's not about changing everything to get from point A to point B. It's just about releasing, the conditioning, the layers of what we take on from the world and what we take on from our families, and like all these things that people project onto us that stick, that we hold on to. It's about releasing those things. And there's a myriad of ways that you can do that. Like, I think it's in the Tao, they say all ways are ways. So it's not like we talk about Psych K a lot. I'm a Psych K facilitator. And that's an amazing tool to help reprogram the subconscious mind. But there's a million different ways. So it was about 4 years ago. I was living on my own in Sydney. I had moved into this apartment with my ex, and then we broke up and he moved out, and I was alone in this, but it was a very small apartment building. It was only like 6 units, and I was on the ground floor, and it was like old. So there wasn't like swipe cards and stuff. And I had a balcony at the front of my unit. And, I remember like not long after he left, I would just lay in bed some nights and like I could just hear every noise, and I would just be laying in bed like panicked, and I didn't even know really why. And then I was like laying there one night and I was like, what's the worst thing that could happen? And I was like, someone could break in and hurt me. And then I was like, well, where's that coming from? And when I was younger, the first house I lived in with my parents, that particular home got broken into 3 times. And one of those times, my mum and I came home at night. It was all dark, and the whole house had been ransacked, and it was horrifying. Like it's probably one of my earliest childhood memories, to be honest. I was only like maybe 3 or 4 at the time.
Oh wow!
And I remember it vividly. And so I realized like that's where that fear came from, was because like having had that experience where I've walked into like someone, because when we got home to, my dad wasn't with us, and we didn't know if anyone was still in the house.
And they don't have guns because they live in Australia.
No, and I'll share this because like my dad had a gun license at this point in time. There was actually a gun in the house, and that's why my mum was also scared, because she's like, I don't know if they've found it, if they've taken it. Yeah. So anyway, so I realized like where that had stemmed from, and I literally just laid there. I guess I just oriented myself, like now knowing what orienting is, like just oriented myself to my environment and just knowing like I'm in my bed and I can feel this, and like I am safe right now. Like there's no one here. There's nothing like, and I don't know. And there was something that shifted after that night. Like I just remember having the realization and realizing where it came from. And like ever since then, I just never, because I'd had experiences before that where I would go into this panic mode over nothing. Like when the house, like another time that it had happened was like there was a blackout, and I just same thing. We could hear everything. And at the time we were renovating our home, so the back wasn't secure. There was just like, like construction gates that were easy to scale or whatever. And the same thing would happen, and it was completely irrational. So yeah, I literally, and this was before I knew about all this like inner work and healing and the different modalities that I'm aware of now. So it can be done without that stuff. But just knowing that you can do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You can get through anything. And maybe you're listening to this and you're thinking, back to a time when you had a similar experience where, without learning about the healing or about, how to transform your perception about something or whatever, you just kind of naturally, something occurred to you and you tried it and it worked. And I think a lot of people have that experience, but then kind of brush it off or don't recognize the significance of that. And it's so significant because we're getting to the point where we need to start relearning to trust ourselves, to trust that intuition, and to really come into this truth. And I think time and experience will testify to the validity of this. But there's an old saying, it's like, there's nothing wrong with you that what's right with you can't fix. And a lot of it is just coming out of the noise and just going into stillness and silence and seeing what comes up and knowing that there is a part of you that is working towards solving all those problems. Anything that you need fixed, you can fix. Anything you need accomplished, you can accomplish. And it will be accomplished in exactly the right time with all the resources presented to you as you need them. And that's not just trying to trick yourself into positive psychology. That's a cold, hard truth. And I've seen that in the past few years, 2 years especially, in starting this business and wondering where the next job's going to come from, the next, because I had a handyman business, and it was like sometimes daily, definitely weekly, but it was like rent's due next week, $2,000. I don't have any money in my bank account. How am I going to do it? And I was learning week by week to trust and just be like, this is a difficult time period, but the only way I'm going to get through this with any sanity is calmly. And so I would just trust. I'd get a message from somebody, hey, I need you to do this job for me. I'd go and do the job, get paid $2,000, pay my rent by Friday. And it happened like week after week sometimes. And living like that is not the way I want to continue to live. So I began looking at the next problem, which is, all right, how do I expand this ability to attract in what I want to get me out of this week by week stress like cycle that I'm in? And again, same thing, trusting yourself, that inner voice, faith and trust in God.
And again,
And
that's
we just
really
keep moving forward.
Yeah, it's a really interesting point you bring up, because again, even though it's very relevant there, even then it's like, I think a lot of people when they're in a situation like that, especially like with finances, or like they're not getting enough work, or they find they need somewhere to live and they can't buy a home, or like whatever it is, they think that they have to do something. Like, I need to work harder, I need to put out more. But again, the irony of it is it's actually like going within and then like seeing where the blocks are coming from, because there's always like, we're always, the things that we usually want to work towards but that seem really hard or seem like we can't get to, it's usually because there's an internal block that we have that we're usually completely unaware of because it's completely unconscious. And yeah, again, it's actually about going within and being like, okay, well, why am I not getting this? Is there a fear underneath? Because again, like, this is what I feel like I'm going through at the moment, is like when we are wanting to, or we're at the precipice of stepping into who we really are meant to be and what we're meant to be doing in the world, there's a part of us that is like, holy shit, this is too much. No, we can't do this. No. And things will show up where it'll hold you back, or you'll be doing all the things, but you're just not getting to where you want to be. And it's because of those internal blocks. And and this is like, again, the stuff I'm learning about the nervous system. And a lot of it has to do with like inner child work, because those parts of us are usually the younger parts of us that see that, the life that we want, or the things that we want, or the things that we're trying to move towards, for whatever reason, aren't safe for us. They feel that because there is no time in the unconscious mind. There is no time. They don't know what happened 20 years ago to what's happening right now. They just like see similar. This is something similar is happening, and we need to be safe. And it'll usually pull back because that's what it's done in the past, and that's what's kept us. Yeah, that's what's kept us alive. So yeah, that's the irony. And I guess that's what you've experienced, and you can speak to this as much as you want, but like, just like the blocks that you've overcome, with the business and again, it was like such a, I think you've said like, having a business is or starting a business and owning your own business is a spiritual experience, because
it really is.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's so funny. And that's something that I heard, again, I talk about him all the time because I'm like, success leaves clues. But Robert Kiyosaki talked about this because he mentored for a period of time under this guy named Buckminster Fuller. And Bucky Fuller was a futurist and a self-taught architect and all this amazing stuff, and philosopher and all this stuff. But he talked about, this point of like similar idea to like all the other greats. I can't remember the names of them. The guy that started the biodynamic farming idea and all this stuff. But this idea out of the stillness, out of the singularity, out of the one, the universal one, which is God, that internal, where we meet him here internally, is like infinite source, infinite possibility. And that's so powerful. But there's sometimes blocks that get in the way. And some of those blocks can be negative energies, negative entities, or whatever. But the idea that to start a business and to run it, it is a spiritual thing. Someone who's achieved certain success in business, if you stripped them away and you took all their money and gave them $50 in an old pickup truck, could they actually get it back? And they can. They have. A guy named Grant Cardone has done that on TV. Granted, it's TV, but they did that as an experiment to see if he could get back to like millions of dollars. And he did. In like 30 days, it was like $5 million. Wow. Where he made a company out of nowhere and made a sales training company that he took to car dealerships and made this business because his spirit and his nervous system and all that stuff has been trained and expanded to a point where he can actually do that. That becomes part of who he is. And spiritual growth is about really connecting and expanding more, or connecting to who you are in more and more ways, more and more fully. And the more spiritually connected you are to God, our source, but also I think an aspect of our higher selves. I don't know how to fully frame that without sounding too new agey and false, but there is a truth to us having a higher aspect of ourself that we can connect to. And it could be the part of us that is connected to God, the part of us that is still a part of him. And it's an interesting topic to get into. But one of the biggest things that made a difference was learning, Psych K. Psych K was a really powerful, subtle, simple. It's not a really complicated process, but we tested some subconscious beliefs and balanced the ones that I didn't believe. And then, things in my business and life made immediate improvements.
And so the beliefs, just to clarify, were all around money and prosperity. It was for me, especially.
And I deserve wealth. Like it's okay for me to be wealthy, things like that. It's okay for me to make money. Some simple things, but it's like, if you really look at it, do people really believe that? I think a lot of people would say no.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, you kind of had this feeling, that's what kind of led us to do that session, was you kind of had this feeling that you're like, I think I've got I'm carrying like this generational like poverty consciousness thing.
Yeah.
I think that's very relevant because I definitely feel that from my family. Maybe one side more than the other, but both, it's definitely relevant because I come from, like, my parents were immigrants to this country, and so my dad's family is Serbian, and they came from literally the villages in Serbia, and they came from a war-torn country, and
Your
so they
family was village people. Is what you're saying.
And they really came here with nothing and built a life for themselves, and they did pretty well for themselves, but because of what they came from, there's still that, even when they made money and they did well for themselves, they always were just saving everything and living on very little. And there's definitely that. And I started to see that show up in my life a little bit. Again, when I started doing this inner work and started wanting to expand myself, I was like, yeah, that's definitely, something that I feel like I'm carrying. And again, it's not things that you're always aware of because they're so subtle. They're under the surface. And especially when it's the conditioning that comes from our family, we just think that everyone's like that because your family's all you know, really. So
it's topics like this and the way that we're discussing them. I'm so excited for future listeners to come back and hear these episodes because we're talking about stuff that is pretty cutting edge. It's pretty unheard of in a lot of circles. You're not going to listen to any other business podcast, and this isn't a business podcast, but this is really about life and being able to provide for yourself, your family, our attitudes around money, looking at the conditioning that goes into what shapes those attitudes, and how to, like I said earlier, how to release that and get back to elevate who we really are. It's almost like a hot air balloon. We just keep rising higher and higher. And with good intentions, with a good heart, we're here to, obviously, like we promote our business and we talk about that, but our business is built around helping people. Our business is built around not undoing mistakes that other companies have done, but just offering an alternative to companies who are making mistakes, in my opinion. Companies who are putting artificial ingredients in their products that are damaging people's health and all that stuff.
I don't think it's a mistake, though. I think they do that on purpose, but that's a whole other topic. We won't open that can of worms.
Yeah, but that's the point. It's like, you're damn right. People that right some wrongs can make rewards from that, and it's good. And you should be doing that too. You should find an opportunity to create something, even if it's a side hustle, to better provide for your family, to give you more financial stability, to have more than one income stream. And that is also a part of this abundance, which is a part of this whole thing with the podcast, Natural AF. It's not just about doing personality quizzes and finding out like, oh, I really do love the color red and puppies are my favorite animals. Like, it's not just about knowing yourself on that level, but it's like, well, for me, from a masculine standpoint, little boys always want to test their strength. And they always, and women too, I'm sure, but in a different way. Maybe.
In a different way. I think boys are more like physically, they want to test their strength and their like pushing their boundaries. Because my brother was like
skills. That. Yeah, we're obsessed with skills and strength. I used to practice throwing. I had these little pointy files that were for sharpening probably chainsaws and stuff, and I would just throw them at wood and just practice throwing knives. And I would literally practice like warrior skills at like 6-7 years old, like for hours, and then, but it's just a part of who I am. And I'm like, all right, I'm interested in expanding my capabilities in more than just, violent arts, but it was always to protect. That's the thing. I was like, oh, I'm going to be the one to defend my family, or I would fantasize about having a love interest and I'd defend her and protect her. And I'm like, and then my daughter came along and I'm like, I'm going to learn how to protect my daughter.
Such a Cancerian. Isaac's a Cancer and they're all about family and home. And that's, of course, you would fantasize about protecting your love interest and your daughter. And
yeah. And it's just, it is built into how we are. And then obviously, movies and TV shows take that and direct it into different, things. But at the base of it, providing for your family as a man is so important. Providing safety and security is really important, as well as finances. And you can do this better when you start to release things that are holding you back. And these, what Kevin Trudeau calls counter intentions, they're a real part of what's holding people back. And there's ways you can do. There's ways that you can release them, and I like thinking like a hacker a little bit too, where it's like, all right, what are some other creative ways? That's part of why I wanted to go to Special Forces, was the improvise, adapt, and overcome mantra that they cultivate in that culture. We really can solve any problem we're faced with, and I think Site K was. Look into it. Look into Site K. Go find a practitioner.
We've actually got Rosie coming up, Rosie Pletzer, who is my instructor. We've got an interview booked with her. So that's coming up soon, which I'm super excited for. So if anyone that wants to know more about that, tune in for that episode. Yeah. But I just wanted to say that, I think when your intentions are pure and they're good, you will be rewarded, because just while you were talking about that, I was thinking about like during COVID, like people that lost their jobs because they chose not to, get the vaccine, which isn't really a vaccine. And, all of these ridiculous, they had to wear masks and whatever. And the people that were just like, I'm not doing that and left. So many people went and started their own businesses, and it wasn't to like, oh, I need a new job. I need to make money. A lot of them started businesses providing things that people needed at the time. They were locked down. They couldn't leave their home, like whatever it was. And not even that like they couldn't leave there, but everything was shut down. So people couldn't get things from the stores that they normally would go to. And so a lot of these businesses were born out of people being of service to others. And they literally, and like I've heard so many stories of people that opened a business during COVID and they were making more money in a few months than what they did at their old job in a whole year. So, and I just think that that's a beautiful example of like when your intentions are good and when what you're doing, and whether like that's not just with work, it might be raising your family, it might be, providing a community service to others that's free, like whatever it is, like when your intentions are good, you will always be rewarded. I truly believe that life will reward you, like God will reward you when your intentions are pure.
Yeah. And don't feel like if it gets hard, then it's always a sign that you shouldn't be doing that either, because there will be some things to get over, some obstacles to overcome. And there will be hard work involved. It doesn't all need to be hard work. You don't have to like be on the grind 24/7 in order to be successful. There's a very, very strong current in the psyche today, in the collective psyche, that's the ultimate way to get to what you want, which is just go full bore and take, extreme levels of activity and work and sacrifice and all this other stuff. Don't see any of your friends or family or anything for years while you go and do your grind and hustle. It doesn't have to be like that, but you do have to be willing to do some work. And you do need to be able to meet obstacles when it comes up, because energetically there are things that want to get in your way. There are things and situations that might come up that might make what you're doing difficult. And you might question whether or not you're really meant to be doing this. And that's where you get to be really clear about what it is you really want.
And I think, sorry, just to jump in, I think also because this was a lesson that I had to learn, or it took me years, but also the challenges and the things that come up that might feel like a roadblock, just also being open to, like, I used to always be like, oh my God, why is this happening? Like I've done, I planned for this and why is it not working out? Whatever. And I used to think like these things were happening to me. Whereas now I'm just like, hang on a sec, maybe I'm going in the wrong direction. Maybe this is coming up because I need to just pivot. So I think it's just like, like taking the challenges as they come and then like discerning whether it's something that's like guiding you in another direction. Is it something that's like, this is coming up from within me? This is something I need to actually overcome. It's something I need to heal from. Is it a self-limiting belief that's coming up? Is it a negative entity? We have like, we will do future episodes on this because it's super fascinating. And I totally believe, like, I've had my own experiences with having things cleared. I had lots of things attached to me from a very young age because I suffered with like mental health stuff from quite a young age. And so knowing that, like, is it a spiritual attack? Is it like, there's so many different things. So just like being aware of those things and being able to discern like what's going on and then just, moving forward accordingly or, maybe pivoting, going in a different direction.
And it's interesting. These entities or these negative energies, I think they're conscious and they're sentient. They're not always what you're dealing with, but they will show up from time to time. And it's not uncommon for most people to have experiences with something without even being aware of it. But these things don't want you to find the things that will actually help and free you from them. So negative voices that come up and say like, oh, don't look into Psych K, don't look into Mace Energy Method, don't look into this or that. It's like, fuck you. Like, look into it if you want to.
Yeah.
If something's telling you to not do something that a lot of other people are saying has helped them, and it's like, no, definitely don't look into that. It's like,
Yeah, I was just going to say.
the entity talking?
Yeah, I was just going to say, if you're hearing this and you're going, entities, that's such bullshit. That's probably an entity speaking. Yeah. So just be aware of that.
Yeah, they're crafty, but they're not that smart. And, it'll be kind of obvious when you see it, but it's like, these methods of releasing these things are, they're available, widely available, and I can't wait to eventually have. I mean, we can definitely get on the guy that did he invent Mace Energy, or did he just start working with it? The
Jerry Marzinski. No, he just works with it. The guy who created Mace is actually Australian. So we should definitely look. Yeah, the Mace.
We're going to get into that.
Yeah, the Mace Institute is actually in Australia. It was founded by an Aussie. Cool. So we should definitely look into that because I only know of Mace through Jerry Marzinski, who I also would love to get on because he's amazing. But
I know a guy.
Yeah, but we're definitely going to get, probably the first person we'll have on to talk about this will be Dottie. Some people listening may already know Dottie, and she's amazing. She's like super tapped in spiritually, and she's had a lot of wild experiences. So we're definitely going to have her on probably in the new year. in 2025. And that'll be a good intro to this kind of stuff.
Yeah. And I guess the last thing that I'll say before we close this out is, just believe in yourself and know that despite of what you might be going through, it could be really severe shit. But you can get through it and you can transform out of it and you can grow through it. And the way out is often through the nonsense, through the hardship, through the doubts, the beliefs, whatever. A couple of years ago, I was a bit of a mess. I was still, going through probably what I think now is like a karmic clearing in a relationship that I had, ending of a third marriage, all these doubts and beliefs and negative self-talk about, you fucked up again. You're just going to keep doing it. And then realizing, no, I do have the power to change at any moment, in any situation. I have the power to find the way out of this. And it may not be immediate or instant, but there's definitely a purpose that we're all here for. And you can connect to that at any moment you choose, and choose a new way forward and begin immediately on choosing and building an alternative to where you are now. And,
it's never too late, guys. Don't think like, oh, I've had my kids and it's just too late for me now. I can't do it now. Like, you can always make a change, no matter how small. You can always start right now.
Yep. And if you've got kids and you feel like you've already messed them up, or you've already like, oh, I've lived unconsciously for these years and now my kids are into drugs and whatever else, you can begin the work. And I think it's vitally important that you start doing the work to clear and heal yourself internally and spiritually, starting with you. The changes there's
a ripple effect. It has a ripple effect.
What we were talking about earlier with healing generations previously and forward, it's worth it to just try it out and see if it really works. Heal something, look towards healing something within yourself that you've been dealing with that you see showing up in your kids. Heal it within yourself. Family constellations is a really cool thing to look
constellation is so powerful.
But just look into doing something for yourself, for your kids, but starting with you, and just see if their lives change as a result of you changing yourself. It'd be really interesting. Alexa's had experiences like that with your own family.
Yeah. My mom and I have always been very close. So we've definitely got a very strong bond. We're the type, like, I'll call her and she's like, oh, I was just about to message you. I was just thinking I got to call you. Like, we always have those experiences. So I've definitely had that experience where my mum has been, and again, this was years ago. This was before I was doing any of my own personal work. And she would be doing things like, it was that book, I think it's called I always forget the name of it, the Healing Codes or something. And it's all about like healing the DNA and how it basically all this stuff we're talking about. And she read the book and she was doing like some of the work that she'd learned through this thing. And I noticed like changes, shifts in my life and how I was feeling at the time. And I was like, that was kind of my first experience. I was like, holy shit, that's pretty powerful. And that's what I remember, because after she read that book, she's like, I can heal you guys. I know, because my mom's always been like, oh, I'm so sorry I fucked you guys up. And it's like, you really didn't. Like, she did the best she could with what she knew at the time. And everyone makes mistakes. I think that's part of being a parent, is you're going to make mistakes with your kids. And I think, it's really important to know that you might make mistakes that affect your children, but at the end of the day, like, and maybe not, this doesn't apply to like babies, but once your kids grow up, like, that they always then have the choice to heal from the stuff that may have impacted them when they were younger. And they're also on their own journey. Like, there were decisions that I made in adulthood that my mom was like, oh, like, she blamed herself. And I was like, Mom, I was going to do that regardless. Like, especially me, like, I'm a Taurus. So I was like, I just do what I want. So I was just like, I do what I want. So, at the end of the day, I'm on my own journey. And I think it's important for parents to remember that as well, that it's not every single thing you do is the reason that your kids do every single thing that they do. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah.
So,
Brilliant. All right. Well, I think this is a good place to jump off. I was glad to come on and share a little bit more of my story, to get people kind of oriented to who I am, my experiences, where I'm coming from when I talk about certain things. And I think I think I'm glad that we did this episode, because
yeah, Isaac and I are very different people, and we've had very different life experiences and backgrounds. And I think I love having these conversations with you because the way we've gone about our own healing journeys has been very different up until this point. And even now, like we use a lot of the same modalities and things, but, you know, excuse me, we were just talking about this last night where Isaac, even when it comes to like healing stuff, Isaac's like, yeah, we'll just do the most extreme thing possible. And it's like, he's very geared towards that and he's very comfortable with that. Whereas for me, that's to me, that's like, I feel like more traumatic. If I'm trying to heal from a trauma, I have to do something extreme. I'm like, no, like I'm need more gentle approaches. But I think it's just a really good example again, that like always our way. So whatever's right for you, it'll usually show up when you need it. And I actually wanted to say this earlier, but intention is so important. So if there is something that you want to heal from, if there's things that you want to move through, but you're not sure how, just put the intention out. Like not long before I met you, I came to a point where I decided like, I want to have kids. I want to have a family because for most of my life I didn't. I wanted to meet, you know, the right man for me that I could be with forever because, you know, prior to my experience, my first experience with Psych K, I didn't believe it was possible for me. And I transformed that and I kind of had made these decisions. And, you know, again, a big motivation for me was I was like, I want to heal from my shit. Like I want to get to a point where when I'm having kids, I'm not carrying all this unconscious stuff and passing that on to them. And honestly, just putting that intention out that I was ready to heal from things just started showing up and not like it wasn't overwhelming. They just showed up when they were ready. Like as I went from one thing to the next, these things would show up, you know, and I said it again recently because something else. And I was like, well, I said I wanted to heal from this and now I've got to, you know, I'm going to heal from this. So like whatever it is, just put the intention is so powerful. Just putting the intention out. If you want to heal, if you know what it is, if you're not sure what it is, but you just, you know that there's something blocking you, just say it. Just say our words are so powerful. God's always listening. Just say like something's holding me back. I don't know what it is, but I really want to heal from it. Put it out there and it'll usually show up. All right.
Well, thank you so much for being a part of this and making this podcast, you know, more lovely and inspirational and true and resonant for a lot of different people. Because, yeah, I speak to a very small percentage of the population, and I think exploring these topics together, I think is I think it's unique in this space, but it's also, just kind of modeling or emulating that healing can take place and you can move forward and you can find real love. You can find a deeper love for yourself and appreciation for who you are, where you've been. And yeah, it's inspirational to me to see you working on yourself and like it's your profession, because it is, but it's like, oh, I get to work on this now. And it's not, why did you do that? You did this to me. Why? Like it's this self-ownership responsibility in a beautiful way that's, just proceeding forward in such a, I don't know, just, it's like a gifted way to do it. But I think anybody can get there where their business, like this work of healing ourselves, becomes just what you do. It's a part of life. It's a part of our resonance going forward, and it's going to make ripples that I think are going to affect generations. So
thank you. Well,
so proud of you.
Well, thank you for inviting me on to be a part of your podcast, because as a projector, it's very important for me to wait for the invitation. And I just want to say too, because I started, you know, I wrote Isaac's introduction and I started with a good rap. So I just want to finish up because this has been on my mind actually the last few days, and I feel like I don't express my gratitude for you enough. But I really admire the work, like the amount of work that you do. We both work a lot, but in very different ways. And Isaac often, you know, thanks me. He always comes up, most days he comes up and he thanks me for, you know, cooking our meals and, you know, doing, you know, helping him out with the business or whatever it is that we, you know, going to the markets with him. And, you know, and I'm happy to do it. I love being, again,
getting up at 5 a.m. and driving to to the market and helping me set up and sell stuff and just doing it with a smile on her face every day. It's great.
Yeah, because it's not, I mean, it's very different when you're running your own business. It doesn't feel like work in the way that showing up to work and getting a paycheck does. It's just a different vibe. So to me, it's like almost doesn't feel like work. But yeah, like you're always so appreciative, and I love that. Obviously, again, projector, like it's important for me to be recognized, and I love that so much that you see me. But I just want to say, like, yeah, like not only thank you, but just how much I do. I actually admire you. Like you're almost like just, you know, silently working away in the corner and like doing things. Like I don't know, half the time he's on his laptop. I don't really know what he's doing, but I know he's working. And then like, you know, and then he like the podcast episode's ready to go, or he's clipped something, or he's like updating the website for Natural Art Form, or like you actually do so much. And I'm so grateful because the things, again, I feel like that's why we complement each other so well. The things like your strengths are like 100% my weaknesses. Like this whole podcast would not have happened.
Same to you. Yeah.
Yeah. This whole podcast, I never could have done. Like I said, I've always wanted to do something like this, but like seeing the amount of work that goes in and having, we're mic'd up and the audio and the recording it and then the post-print, like now I see the work that goes in. I'm like, I never could have done this on my own. And I'm just so grateful for you. And I'm so appreciative of all the work that you put in and everything that you do. And like your drive, like you're so driven to provide for our future family that we're hoping to start very soon. And, you know, for me, and yeah, I just love that. So thank you so much. So, and I'm sorry to everyone that we're getting so soppy right now.
Yes, we work together.
Yeah.
We only high five on the internet. No
smooching. Yeah, we're not like huge fans of PDA, guys. That's for behind closed doors.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us. Thanks for tuning in and liking and sharing this episode, supporting us. And we also can't do this without y'all. So if there's, just send us some good love, send us some good vibrations, and help us in our work to spread the message.
Yeah. And we ask people to support, you know, help support us by supporting the business, but you don't have to contribute monetarily at all. Like it really just helps if you just share this episode with other people, or just liking the episode, or commenting, or interacting with us on socials, and like sharing our clips, like for our episodes on socials. Like we appreciate that so much because we are really just starting out, and that makes all the difference as well. So you don't have to contribute monetarily. Every little bit counts. So whatever you'd like to do, we greatly appreciate it.
Yeah, great or small, we appreciate all the help. So thank you guys, and we'll catch you next time.
Bye guys.